I thought it was something that was helping me, which it was in the moment. It was hurting you. That was causing a misunderstanding of what was going on, and it just exacerbated the situation even more. It triggered you. So now, what are we arguing about?
But it really needs to be like you're feeling this person. We talking about if you feeling it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about no, oh yeah, we met him and we went on a little days, and we're talking about like this is a vibe from both sides. Welcome to another episode of Couples Unscripted. I am your host, Ayana, and my lovely husband, Nyles. We are going to dive into another episode, and it's going to talk about red flags in a relationship. And how you navigate those red flags and build a healthier dynamic. So, in the beginning of our relationship, we did have some red flags, and they weren't specifically deal breakers, but it was something that needed to be addressed, or it could become a deal breaker. So we want to dive into that with what you can take away from this episode. It's going to be our key points that we'll talk about today, which is understanding the root causes, communication strategies, and then some actionable solutions that you guys can work on, or that may help for you, that helped us, so it could possibly help for you. Again, we are not licensed professionals. We are just here to have a fucking raw and dope conversation about couples and how we navigated our relationship, and hopefully we can help somebody else. So before we get started, we are going to play one of our Couples Unscripted games, and it's going to be our Couples Unscripted card game, which you guys have seen from Couples on the Streets, Street Talks, and you can go check out that video. It is up on YouTube, and go check out that video. We talked to couples on the streets. So we are going to, we're gonna dive into some of these questions.
Alrighty. All right. First one off the top. When did you first realize you were in love with each other?
Okay. I feel like I first knew that I was in love with Nyles. Is it in love? Or is it love?
When did you first realize you were in love with each other?
I think in love and love is such a different...
It's two different things.
Situation.
Because you have love for someone to being in love.
When I fell in love with you, I don't know if that was a specific time frame for me. Okay. But I will say, like, when I love Nyles, because I feel like in love just became a progression of time for me.
It wasn't like a moment where you were like, oh man, I'm in love with you. Okay.
No, because for me, but I can say that I loved Nyles. The moment I loved him was very beginning in our relationship. It was like 5 months in. We were at a rooftop and we were just talking, and I was looking at him and I said, I love this man, but I don't want to say I love him first. And then I had told you that I really want to say something, but I didn't want to say it first. Obviously, some of us gals don't want to be saying it first, whatever that means. But that's when I was like, I loved him.
Okay.
I just loved everything about him. And in that moment, it was of like 5 months, I realized that I loved him. Okay. One for you.
Okay, yeah. Pull up top. What's up?
Share 3 affirmations you think your partner loves to hear and say them while holding their hands and looking into their eyes. Ooh,
okay. 3 affirmations. I think you're beautiful. You're strong, and I love you.
I don't know if I love you is an affirmation.
That's not affirmation? All right. You're beautiful. You're strong, and you're going to make a great mother.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yes.
I love it. Thanks, babe. Yeah. Love you. Cheers, cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to the questions and great answers.
So that was the Couples Unscripted card game. Just a little intro to it, but you'll see more questions on Couples on the Streets. So don't forget to check that out. But let's dive back into red flags, as I know there are a lot of red flags that pop up in the beginning of relationships. I know for us, we're going to dive into that throughout this segment. And we really want to talk about what a red flag really is and what it means to even have red flags. So, what are red flags to you?
I believe some red flags that you can identify like really early on in a relationship. Say, for instance, someone or your partner, they avoid the conflicts. There's an issue going on and they tend to avoid it. Or they get super defensive, even on lighthearted situation that shouldn't really be elevated to that type of scenario, or they're controlling. Everything kind of have to be their way, and then they're light and then they're vain. Lack of communication, they're unable to communicate effectively to you, or they may have dismissive behavior. You have a partner and they just really nonchalant. They're not really in tune with the things that you have going on. Those are some red flags that you can identify really early in a relationship. And if you do identify those, it's on you to then determine if it's an opportunity to grow in a relationship with your partner, or if it's a deal breaker where it's like, yo, this is a red flag, it's too much for me, there's no wavering on it, it's done. That's a personal type of thing, but I do believe those are some red flags that you can identify early on in a relationship.
Yeah, and like you said, if you identify red flags, either you're like, this person is worth it and I can see something developing from them, and I want to see if we can dig a little bit deeper and figure out what are the root causes of this red flag that I'm pointing out, or is there something that I can do differently? How can we have this conversation and communication to help grow the relationship? And it's not a deal breaker. It just depends on if you really feel like this person is worth it.
Yeah, that's important.
For me, when I met Nyles, I felt like there were red flags, but I knew you were worth it. And I knew that you had all of the like you were checking all of the boxes and you had all the qualities that I was looking for. So I'm like, okay, well, there's definitely some red flags, but I still want to continue to grow. And it wasn't a deal breaker for me. So the red flags for me with you were when we had conflict, when we had disagreements, there was a lot of like built up anger, and there was a lot of emotions that was coming from these arguments or these disagreements that we had. And I would see these outbursts, and I was seeing that you weren't able to control your emotions. And I think for me, that was a red flag, because I wanted to be able to have a conversation where we can sit down. I mean, not all conversations when we're having disagreements, you can sit down, but to a degree, I wanted to be able to have a conversation to where nobody's storming off and then I don't feel hurt. So I know I can be a bit, what's the word? Not combative, but like
abrasive.
Yeah, like I can be condescending. I think I can be pretty condescending. Okay. Back then, I would say, oh, there you go, run off. There you go again, running off, dealing with your emotions. Like, I'm triggering him even more because I'm fueling the fire. And I wasn't trying to figure out the root problem. I was like, here he goes again doing the same behavior that I don't like. But I'm also not coming down to him and saying, baby, talk to me. What's going on? Like, because I can be very calm in an argument. I'd be like, oh, there you go again with that shit. Like, look at you. Here we go again, and then that just takes somebody who can't handle their emotions to another level. So for me, yes, that's something that I needed to work on, but the red flag was also me. The red flag within the red flag was me.
But I had to be better at in those moments, and when we did have disagreements or conflicts, and it was an argument, and when we were in the argument, I had to be better in regards to the conflict resolution. I was taught initially, something comes up, sometimes you need to remove yourself from the situation because you got to remove yourself. So I would try to remove myself. The conversation going nowhere. I felt like I would repeat myself. I'm on the 8th, 9th, 10th time of repeating myself. And And so I would try to remove myself, to try to simmer down, to try to collect my thoughts, but that would trigger her. And then, so I had to then realize, like, all right, I have to process things differently and in the moment. And I believe that helped cure the red flags that initially was there, because I was able to control myself in those moments once I identified. And you let me know, like, hey, this is an issue for real. So
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it was too much for me to deal with somebody who wasn't able to like control their emotions at that point in our relationship in the beginning.
yeah,
So I can't really say that there were many other red flags other
than that.
than that. That was huge for me because growing up, we didn't have like outbursts in our house.
Yeah.
You know, nobody was yelling, nobody was screaming. Like, you know, you were disciplined. We talked about it and we moved forward. And when I saw that he was running away from conversations and having outbursts in the car and like leaving and pacing back and forth, it was just something that was very unfamiliar for me. I wanted to run away. And I was like, okay, well, Nyles has all the attributes that I'm looking for. Let's see if we can get to the root of the problem. But I also want Nyles to talk about his red flag, because he also had a red flag when it came to me.
Yeah, and my red flag, in regards to Ayana, it was in the conversation whenever we were talking, and we'll be talking about whatever the topic was. There was often times where it was her opinion was the conversation, and it dominated, and it was the law of it was her way, or is the law of the land, pretty much, in regards to the conversation. So if I try to interject, try to provide my viewpoint or anything, it made the conversation like I was combative, when honestly I'm just speaking my honest life or whatever. And so it was difficult to have conversation at times with her, because anytime I spoke on things from my past or how I may have went about doing something, she took it like a slight to her, and it was incorrect, it was wrong, and then it was like an overcorrection sometimes from you and your reaction to it, to like now you almost not intentionally but like kind of talking down on me. And I was like, yo, I can't, there's no peace in this. I just want to be able to state my opinion, my viewpoint from my upbringing or from my position, and it just be a conversation, and there's nothing to it. It shouldn't even have to get to the point to where we are at the point of contention. It made it tough initially to have conversations for a while, because it was like anytime something was brought up, and it's the trivial things, simple conversations, it'll be more than what it should have been. I'm like, how did we get here? How did a simple conversation get to this point? And why me making a statement from my vantage point that has no bearing on our life, why does it feel like it irks her to the way that she gotta try to correct me? And so that was tough. I appreciate the fact when I advise you or let you know, like, hey, it's tough. You know what I'm saying? It's tough for me to speak. It's tough for me to get it out. What's going on? Why is that? We was able to kind of like really move past it, because I used a mechanism or a technique to where I would, in the conversation, I would flip my question sometimes, or I would rephrase a question to solicit a different answer from you. And then sometimes you would be like, and then the conversation would pivot, it shift a little bit, and then we can kind of move on. Or you could be like, oh, babe, I see what you're saying. Oh, I get it. The little light bulb would click. And you may not always agree, but you be like, oh, I see what you mean. And I appreciate that when you would be like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. Cool. I wouldn't do it.
Those are the red flags.
Yeah, those are the red flags, And in regards to those red flags, we realized it was things from our past that may have caused the red flags that we contributed.
The root of where those stemmed from and how we can understand what the root of those red flags that we had for each other were coming from, so that we can understand a little bit about like our background, our history, where we come from, how my childhood was, how your past experiences are, because what we do today and how our actions are today are a reflection of our past, is a reflection of our upbringing and our childhood, and what we go through and how we're raised has a huge impact in our relationships and how we navigate those.
Regardless if you want to admit it or not, like your upbringing and your past do have a reflection on who you are today, good, bad, or indifferent. So we do have to be honest with ourselves in that, and address those and finding the root problem to why we may be the person with the red flag. Because in a partnership, you may be the person that is the red flag, and you need to identify that just as well as your partner seeing it. You need to be able to see it and be like, oh man, I am the problem. And why am I this way?
Having a conversation with you and figuring out, why the hell is he doing all this extra shit? Instead of me saying, hey, I can't deal with this anymore, I'm out, or leaving the situation, leaving the relationship, I found out that the root cause of these outbursts and these holding in your emotions and then letting them unfold was due to your past and some past relationships, and then also
just being told, if those are situations, you remove yourself. Those are conflict resolutions for me in certain settings in the past, and I had to update how I handle conflicts now in the present. And I didn't understand, hey, this is not schoolyard situation to where I'm not getting in a fight with you. Like, of course, I'm not getting to the blow. So I don't need to remove myself. I need to be able to process and to communicate with you. Back in school and stuff, it was mainly two dudes beefed up, and we all testosterone up, and we probably about to come to blows. You need to remove yourself from this situation because y'all not even trying to talk. Ours was like, we're trying to have a conversation, and I don't have the ability currently to communicate effectively what I'm going on. Or I may have felt like I have communicated and you still want me to communicate again, and now I'm frustrated due to past things of what's going on. And so we identified it, and then I realized that, all right, bet I have to change some of my ways in order to not be a red flag. And the same for you. When I, like I said, I'll let you know about what it was, you was able to source the reason why you were the way you were in certain conversations. And you was like, oh, babe, I see, that I have been like this when we had conversations. And I have kind of forced my narrative on conversations, and you adapted and you adjusted and you were accountable and you acknowledged it. And I think that's important,
Yeah, and I think for me, just like growing up, I was a shy girl. I was a shy kid. So we were very opinionated in our house, and everybody's voice was heard. And you had an opinion, you had opinion, everybody had opinion, but we kind of all had the same opinions. I have a very small, close-knit family. So we all think very much the same, and now I think a little different, but we pretty much all thought the same, and we always were very opinionated. But the thing is when I was in school, I was very reserved, and I was not very opinionated at all. But I could come home, talk, we could have open conversations, I could be opinionated with my family. So going into a relationship, not being really social outside of your house, but then being really opinionated inside of your house was like a really weird,
the dynamic.
Yeah, dynamic. So when I got into a relationship, I'm like, well, I feel safe, because I didn't specifically feel safe all the time with the groups of people I was talking to really be vulnerable. So now I meet somebody that I can be vulnerable with. I might be putting my opinion out there a bit too much, or I might be trying to assert myself, and this is the way I think, and this is what's law, when it's really not. So I did have to learn different dynamics. Like, I was shy in high school, and then college I kind of found myself a little bit more. I'm a princess, I'm a diva a little bit, I have ways of control. So I think kind of going into that, you always think your way is the highway, and how you grew up was not the best by any means, but you had a pretty decent, I would say pretty great upbringing, but you're able to take that and learn different tactics, different ways of talking to people. Being right is not a contest.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be right in a relationship. I need to understand you, and you have to understand me.
Yeah.
And there doesn't need to be this way of control and controlling each other.
Yes.
So I have learned exponentially, and I think you can take things from your past in your social life and how you were raised in your childhood, and you can internalize that and understand how you grew up, but then what's going to work best for you in your relationship.
Period. Yeah.
You might love your parents' parenting style. You might want to change something. You can take all those little bits and pieces, and then you can
mold it.
Yeah, you can mold it and say, I want to do things a bit differently with how I was raised, or I can understand that that's how my parents went about raising me.
However,
I can understand that.
However, I prefer to do it.
And I recognize that, and I can be my own person, have my own thoughts, and stand on my own business, but be respectful. I think when you're finding the root problem, you can use I a bit more. So compassionate questions. So I feel unheard when you walk away from me. I feel upset when we don't get to finish our conversation. Asking those compassionate questions is important, because in that moment where Nyles walked away, instead of me being like, there you go again, walking away, I could have said, I don't feel heard right now because your emotions are high. Can we revisit this conversation, or can you come here and sit down and so there could be a different, way of attacking.
Which is
not attacking, but attacking the problem.
The problem. Oh, yes. But what you did, that's creating a safe space. Basically saying, I'm not being heard right now. I want to be heard. I want to be able to have the communication. Me walking away, even though I thought it was something that was helping me, which it was in the moment, it was hurting you. That was causing a misunderstanding of what was going on. And it just exacerbated the situation even more. It triggered you. So now, what are we arguing about? It's not even about the initial thing. So misunderstandings happens in a relationship. Please check out our previous show in regards to misunderstandings. But
yeah, for sure. Check it out. But yes, check out our other episode of Misunderstandings, where we definitely dive into that a little bit more, because this piggybacks into misunderstandings in relationships.
It does. Yeah, but again, like the statement of I is very important to utilize, and so you can be heard and you can let it be known. Then it's a personal thing, and hopefully your partner can receive that information and understand, like, all right. And also it's important to seek professional help. Like, go to a therapist, seek counseling.
If you feel like that relationship is worth it, and you guys, you feel like you're going to build. Yeah. Seek professional help.
Seek it.
It's important for your partner to be able to be emotionally available and ready to talk about their past experiences, because when you know about your partner's past, you know about them and you know why they do the things that they do. And so you don't trigger them. You know that past experience, and you know if you say something to them,
it's going to trigger them. Like,
it's going to trigger them in that time.
If you really care about your partner, the intention of conversation is not to trigger you. Right. And once I realize certain triggers come, it is on me to avoid triggering you. Now, is the expectation also for your partner to address some of those issues that trigger them? I believe so, yeah. Like, we have to grow and heal and address some of our traumas. That means finding the root cause of what may have caused certain trauma, or reactions. and or the reason why we may react a certain way. So it is the person, like, I had to still grow personally. Both people have to grow in it.
Yeah.
It takes both to grow in it.
And that's how you would navigate those red flags together.
Yeah.
Like, you would have those conversations. You might seek professional help. You might, create those safe spaces, open up that dialogue to each other, and try to navigate those together.
And we got to understand, like we said earlier, the red flags are not always a signal to an ending. It don't have to always be a signal to an ending. It could be the beginning to something new. It could be the catalyst to like a brand new chapter, because I believe once I was able to have those conversations whenever we had disagreements in a better light, I believe you love me. You like it. You appreciated me more. I could tell whenever we had those conversations, we had a disagreement and we made it through. You'd be like, "Oh, baby," you know.
Yeah, because you're closer to them and you learn more things about your partner. You're like, "Oh shit, I didn't know that about you."
Hell yeah, and I love
you
that
just
shit.
grow more fond of each other.
Yeah, I love when you get all snuggly and lovey up on me. You're like, "Oh, hey, baby, like, come here, girl."
I know everything about this man.
Everything, literally.
All of it.
The good, the bad,
The
ugly.
juicy, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. I think the takeaway to red flags is identify what the red flags are. Identify them. Figure out if they're deal breakers for you.
Yes. If this person's worth it.
Yeah. Are they worth it? Sometimes red flags don't have to be deal breakers. It could be a moment for growth in a relationship. But it really needs to be like you're feeling this person. We talking about if you feeling it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about we met him and we went on a little days, and we're talking about like this is a vibe from both sides.
But if it's a vibe and it's been a vibe for 4 months, but they are still lacking in communication,
that's a red flag. But then we have to identify. I feel like we have to identify a little bit more, because if they're how invested are we in the relationship?
Yeah.
Because there might be a lack of communication.
but because maybe they think
why is there lack of communication? Are they really feeling you and they want it to work, but they're just having lack of communication?
Have you communicated that to them? Like, hey, I want more out of this relationship. Because sometimes red flags are self-induced because both parties haven't done the necessary work within the dynamic. And that's why the red flags occur, because it do take both parties to do the necessary work to eliminate the red flags. Because certain red flags are like, I feel like superficial red flags. And then there are like legit personal people red flags that are characteristic.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about mainly characteristic type of red flags that are like, if you are someone who is super defensive and everything, that's a characteristic trait of yours. If you're someone who is controlling of situations, that is a characteristic trait of yours. And we need to identify why that is, and if you can evolve a little bit to where you're not as defensive, not as controlling. We're not saying change who you are, but if it's hurting the person who you want to be with and want to be with you, there need to be some evolution to how you go about those situations.
Said it beautifully.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And once you identify a red flag in your relationship, how do you uncover the root cause and navigate it to build a healthier dynamic? Yeah. We went over what our red flags are, what we went through. We're still here today after 8 years of having those red flags.
Going strong.
We figured out the root cause. Our childhoods and our past experiences are still the same, but we chose to be together and navigate those red flags together and figure out how to create a safe space. We've gone to therapy. We are still in therapy. So take those situations and take those identifiers and grow. Work together if it's not a deal breaker for you.
Yeah, that's what you have to do, especially once you identify, hey, this person is worth it. When that red flag currently is not the deal breaker, I'm willing to work through that to be with this person. Once you identify that, find a solution. That's all we can say. We wanted to find a solution. When she brought that to my attention, I wanted to find a solution to be better for her, because that's the person I wanted to be with. So you need to listen to your partner. Need to communicate to get over those get over these hurdles
With the red flags.
With these red flags. Yes. And again, we aren't licensed therapists. We aren't. We're just here to
have a conversation about couples, and we've been together for 8 years, and this is how we navigate our relationship. So tune in, subscribe, follow us on all social media platforms. Instagram at Couples Unscripted. Facebook is the same. YouTube, Couples Unscripted. And we're also on TikTok and Threads. Please give us a like, subscribe, and share so we can be able to continue to have these conversations with you guys. Please continue to check out all of our other podcasts and all of our other
shows that we have coming. We have a lot
all of our
of
shows that we have
pipeline.
coming. We also have a Couples on the Street Talk, so check that out. We will see y'all on the next episode, and thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah, have a great one. Thank y'all. Cheers real quick. Cheers.